Hello, everybody, and welcome to chapter 30 of the book of Bereishit as we continue to travel through Tanach. Chapter 30 has 43 verses and it's found in the Koren Sachs Chumash on page 196 and 197. In this chapter, we are continuing to talk about the birth of the rest of the 12 tribes, and it starts with Rachel, who is distressed by her inability to have children, so she gives her maid Bilhah to Yaakov, resulting in the birth of Dan and Naphtali. Leah then gives her maid Zilpah to Yaakov, who bears Gad and Asher. Leah then has two more sons herself, Yisachar and Zebulun, as well as a daughter, Dinah, following an agreement involving Reuben's mandrakes. Hashem then remembers Rachel, and she gives birth to Yosef, expressing her hope for another child. And then the chapter will close describing Yaakov's growing wealth and an arrangement with Lavan over the breeding of the flock, which will see Yaakov's success despite Lavan's continued attempts to exploit him and deceive him. With that introduction in mind, let's turn to chapter 30, verse 1. Vatera Rachel ki lo yalda Yaakov. Rachel saw that she had not borne any children to Yaakov, but kanei Rachel ba'achosa. And Rachel became envious of her sister. Vatomer el Yaakov. And she said to Yaakov, Havali vanim, give me children, vim ayin mesa anochi. If not, let me die. Verse 2, Vayichar af Yaakov Rachel. Yaakov grew angry with Rachel. Vayomer, and he said, Hasachas Elohim anochi, am I in place of Hashem? Hashem manam mimech pri vaten, who has kept you from having children. Verse 3, Vatome, and so she said, Hine amasi Bilha, bo eleha. Here is Bilha, my slave, come to her. V'seled al birkai, v'ibani gam anochi mimena. Let her give birth on my knees, so that I too can build a family through her. This may sound similar to the arrangement that Sarah had in place with Avraham, where she gave Hagar to him in order that he could have a child, and that child was Yishmael. Here we see something a bit different. In this verse, Rachel presents Bilhah to Yaakov as Amasi, as my Amah, which is different to a Shifcha, which is different to a slave or a maid servant. And Amah is the phrase that we would give to a Jewish maidservant. And we see that Rachel is trying to correct the situation that had happened with Sarah and Hagar. Here it seems that Rachel is intending to take a much more active role in raising this child and will treat him as one of her own. That is in contrast to the arrangement with Hagar, who raised Yishmael. Verse 4, Vatite lo es Bilha shivchasa isha. So she gave him her maid Bilha as a wife, V'yavo eleha Yaakov. And Yaakov came to her. Verse 5, Vataha Bilha vatele Yaakov bain. And Bilha became pregnant and gave birth to a son for Yaakov. Verse 6, Vatomer Rachel, and Rachel said, Donani Elohim, Hashem has judged me, V'gam shoma b'koli, vayitin li bain. And he has listened to my voice and given me a son. Al kain karash shemo Dan. And therefore she named him Dan. Verse 7, Vataha Od. She became pregnant again. Vateled Bilha Shivchas Rachel, Ben Sheni Yaakov. And Bilha, the maidservant of Rachel, gave birth again to a second son for Yaakov. Verse 8, Vatomer Rachel. And Rachel said, Naftule Elohim niftalti imachosi gam yacholti. I have struggled hard with my sister, and I have won. Vatikra Shemo Naphtali. So she named him Naphtali. Verse 9, Vatera Leah, ki amda miledes. Leah realized that she was no longer having children. Vatikach es Zilpa shivchasa, and so she took Zilpa, her maidservant, vatitenosa Yaakov leisha, and gave her to Yaakov as a wife. Verse 10, Vateled Zilpa shivchas Leah liyaakov ben, and Leah's maid Zilpa bore Yaakov a son. Verse 11, Vatomer Leah bar Gad. Leah said, Good fortune has come, Vatikra es Shemo Gad. So she named him Gad. Verse 12, Vateled Zilpa Shivchas Leah ben Sheni Yaakov. Then Zilpa, Leah's maid, gave birth to a second son for Yaakov. Verse 13, Vatomer Leah be'ashri ki ishruni banos. Leah said, How blessed I am. Young girls will call me blessed. Vatikra es Shemo Asher. So she named him Asher. Verse 14, now we have a bit of a side story that sets us up for the birth of the next few sons. Verse 14, Vayelech Reuven, b'mei ketzir chitim. Reuven went out in the days of the wheat harvest. Vayimtza dudaim basadeh. and he found dudaim in the field. Dudaim are usually translated as mandrakes because of their association with fertility. Vayave osam el Leah imo, and she brought them to his mother Leah. Vatomer Rachel el Leah, and Rachel said to Leah, Tnina li midudoi b'nech. Please give me some of your son's mandrake. And it seems from the sources and many of the deeper sources as well that the reason she's doing this is because she understands that these mandrakes have a fertility value, and that could be extremely important for her to be able to finally have children. Verse 15, Vatomer la, but Leah says to Rachel, Hama'at kaftech es ishi, is it not enough that you have taken my husband? V'lakachas gam es dudai b'ni. Now you want to take my son's mandrakes as well? Vatomer Rachel, and Rachel said, Lachein, therefore, Yishkav imach halayla, tachas dudai b'nech. Let Yaakov sleep with you tonight in exchange for your son's mandrake. Seems that she was scheduled to spend the night with Rachel, but she was willing to forego that so that she would be able to get hold of these mandrakes. Verse 16, Vayova Yaakov min hasadeh ba'erev. When Yaakov came home that evening, Vatetse Leah likraso. Leah was the one that came out to meet him. Vatomer elai tavo, you are to come with me. Isachor scharticha b'dudai b'ni, for I have hired you with my son's mandrakes. Vayishkav ima balaylahu. So that night he slept with her. And as we've said on so many occasions before, it is so important not to just read this chapter, not to read any of these chapters merely as some drama. We are talking about extremely righteous women, prophetesses in their own right. Both Rachel and Leah understand that they are negotiating over the birth of the next tribes. They understand fundamentally that they are building a nation over here and not just negotiating over who gets to be able to be intimate with whom. Verse 17, Vayishma Elohim el Leah, Hashem listened to Leah, who obviously is desperate to be able to be appreciated in Yaakov's eyes. Vatahar vatele leYaakov ben chamishi, and she conceives and she gives birth to a fifth son for Yaakov. Verse 18, Vatomer Leah, and Leah said, Nasan Elohim sechari, asher nasati shifchasi leishi. Hashem has rewarded me for giving my maid to my husband, but tikra shemo Yisachar, so she named him Yisachar. Verse 19, Vataha od Leah, and she conceived again, Vateled ben Shishi Yaakov, and gave birth to a sixth son for Yaakov. Verse 20, Vatomer Leah, and Leah said, Zvadani Elohim osi, Hashem has given me a precious gift. Zeved tov hapam yizbeleni ishi. This time my husband will honor me. Ki yoladati lo shisha vanim, for I have borne him 6 sons. Vatikra es shemo Zevulun, so she named him Zevulun. Va'achai yalda bas, and afterwards she gave birth to a daughter. Vatikra es shema Dina, and she named her Dina. And what's incredible here is that at this point she now has 6 sons, 6 of the tribes. She has single-handedly given birth to half of the tribes that are destined to be born. And we then read about the birth of a daughter. And our rabbis point out that the birth of Dinah is not prefaced with the regular reference to Leah becoming pregnant. And they explain that because she'd already given birth to 6 of the 12 tribes, Leah was concerned about the impact it would have on Rachel if she gave birth to a 7th. Therefore, she actually prayed that she should give birth to a daughter. And a miracle occurred. Hashem swapped the fetuses, resulting in Leah giving birth to Dinah and Rachel giving birth to Yosef. And since the main part of their pregnancies did not take place inside their own wombs, the Torah omits the particular detail about them being pregnant. Verse 22, Vayizkor Elohim es Rachel. Hashem remembered Rachel. Vayishma eleha Elohim, vayiftach es rachma. And he listened to her and enabled her to conceive. Verse 23, Vatahar, Vateled ben, she conceived and gave birth to a son. Vatome osaf Elohim es cherpasi. And she said, Hashem has taken away my shame. Vatikra es shemo Yosef, and she named him Yosef, Lemor, saying, Yosef Adonai li ben acher. May Hashem grant me another son also. Verse 25, Vayhi ka'asher yalda Rachel es Yosef, after Rachel had given birth to Yosef, Vayome Yaakov el Lavan, Yaakov said to Lavan, Shalcheni, send me away, release me, Ve'elcha el makomi la'artzi, and I will go home to my own land. And this decision that he is going to finally leave and take his family with him is going to open us up now to the rest of the chapter, to a very curious story about how Yaakov is going to be paid for all the work that he has been doing. Verse 26, Tana es noshai ve'es yaladai. Give me my wives and my children, asher avadati osecha bahen ve'elecha, for whom I have worked for you, and let me go. Ki ata yodata es avodasi asher avadaticha, for you know very well how much work I have done for you. Verse 27, Vayona elav Lavan. Lavan said to him, Imna matzasi chen beinecha, if you will allow me to say so, nichashti vayavaracheni Adonai biglalecha. I've learned by divination that it is because of you that Hashem has blessed me. Verse 28, Vayomar, and he said, Nakva sacharcha alai ve'etena. Specify your wage to me, and I will give it. Verse 29, Vayoma elav, and he said to him, Atayodata es asher avadaticha. You know well how I have worked for you, ve'es asher hayam miknecha iti, and how your livestock have fared under my care. Verse 30, Ki ma'at asher haya lecha lefanai, for the little that you had before I came, vayifrotz larov, has expanded substantially. Vayivarech Adonai osecha leragli, as Hashem has blessed you wherever I have been. Va'ata, and now, Mosai e'eseh gam anochi leveisi. When can I do likewise for my own household? Verse 31, Vayomer, and he said, Ma eten lach, what shall I give you? Vayomer Yaakov, and Yaakov said, Los iten li me'uma, do not give me anything. Im tasa li hadavar hazeh, if you do this one thing for me, Ashuva eretzo necha eshmor, I will continue to shepherd and guard your flocks. Verse 32, Evor b'chol tzoncha hayom, let me go through all your flocks today, Haser misham koser, nakod v'talu, and let me remove every speckled or spotted sheep, v'chol sechum baksavim, and every dark-colored lamb, v'talu v'nakod ba'izim, and every spotted or speckled goat, v'hayas sechari, and that shall be my wage. Verse 33, Va'ansa bi tzidkasi biyom machar, let my honesty testify for me in the future, Ki savos chari lefanecha. Whenever you come to check the wages that you have paid me, kol asher einenu nakod v'talu ba'ivim, any goat that is not speckled or spotted, v'chumbak savim, and any lamb that is not dark-colored, ganuvhu iti, it shall be considered stolen if it's in my possession. Vayomer Lavan, and Lavan said, Hain, okay, agreed. Lu yihi barecha, let it be as you have said. Verse 35, Vayasar bayom hahu, so Lavan removed on that day, es hatyashim ho'akudim v'hatluim, all the ringed and spotted he-goats, ves kol ha'izim hanakudos v'hatluos, and all the speckled or spotted female goats, kol asher Lavan bo, every one that contained a trace of white, v'chol chum baksavim, and every dark-colored lamb, vayitain biyad banav, and he placed them in the care of his sons. Verse 36, Vayasem derech shloshes yamim beino uvein Yaakov. Then he put a distance of 3 days between himself and Yaakov. Yaakov ro'eh es son Lavan hanosaros. And Yaakov tended to the rest of Lavan's flock. So now, having taken away a lot of the sheep that were going to have otherwise been designated to Yaakov, what's he going to do? So the Torah tells us, verse 37, Vayikach lo Yaakov. Yaakov took Makal livneh, lach, veluz, va'armon. He took fresh shoots of poplar, almond, and chestnut, vayifatzel bahen psalos levanos, and he peeled white strips in them, machsof halavan asher al hamaklos, exposing the white of the shoots. Verse 38, vayatzeg es hamaklos asher pitzel bar hatim b'shikasos hamayim, and he set the peeled shoots in all of the water troughs, asher tavona hatzon lishtos, that the flocks would come to drink at, lenochach hatzon, and it would be in front of the flocks, ve'yechamna bevoan lishtos, and they would mate when they would come to drink, vayechlemu hatzon en hamaklos, and since they mated by these shoots, vateilatna hatzon akudim nekudim utluim, they would give birth to streaked, speckled, and spotted young. And that was how he would repopulate flocks that he was going to be entitled to take. Verse 40, V'haksavim hifrid Yaakov, Yaakov would separate out the young of the flock, Vayiten pnei hatzon el akod v'kol chum b'tzon lavan, And he would make the others belonging to Lavan face the streaked and dark-colored animals. Vayashes lo adarim levado. So he bred separate flocks for himself, v'lo shasam al tzon Lavan, and he did not let them breed with Lavan's flocks. Verse 41, V'haya b'chol yachem hatzon hamakusharos. Whenever the stronger animals were mating, v'sam Yaakov esamaklos leinei hatzon barhatim. Yaakov would place the shoots in the troughs facing them, leiachamena b'maklos, so that they would mate facing the shoots. Verse 42, V'ha'atif hatzon lo yasin. And the weaker animals he would not put there. V'haya ha'atufim leLavan v'akashurim liYaakov. So the weaker ones went to Lavan, and the stronger ones went to Yaakov. And finally, verse 43, Vayifrotz ha'ish ma'od ma'od, the man became exceedingly prosperous, Vahilo son rabos, and he had large flocks, ushfachos la'avadim, and female and male servants, ugmalim v'chamorim, as well as camels and donkeys. And that brings us to the end of chapter 30. In chapter 31, we will read about Yaakov and his family finally departing from the house of Lavan. I look forward to learning that with you, but in the meantime, have a wonderful and meaningful day.